While trying to control my younger siblings, I reached down and examined the large coat covered in fresh blood. Upon closer inspection, I realized that there were also pieces of bone sticking to it as though from a recent attack. It's also stuck in the jacket pocket a letter, torn and a bit faded, addressed to my mother. This is what it had to say. To whom it may concern, I, Kenneth Avery, being of sound mind and body, do hereby relinquish all assets and properties attained by me during my tenure at Asher's Grove, and wish to announce my intention to resign from my position as data associate effective immediately, 2 weeks from now. I would like to take this time to express my thanks to each and every individual that helped me grow and adjust to this field of study. While I understand that this is a decision that affects my previously agreed upon 2-year contract, I've reviewed my options and believe that a change in perspective is necessary for me to continue to grow as an individual. If I can be of any use to select my replacement, please be sure to contact me post-haste. And again, with best regards and sincerest apologies, Dr. Kenneth Avery. As soon as I finished reading it, I felt guilty for finding it a bit amusing. Although intended for my mother, I knew that no one in the vicinity of Asher Grove would ever bother to read such a letter. It didn't seem right, though, to simply ignore it. If no one came forward about this, I knew that it could lead to lingering doubt and uncertainty, a feeling of abandonment. It was a feeling we knew too well. I didn't care about what people at Asher Grove felt, that's for sure. But I'm sure that Kenneth had relatives and family that needed to know what happened to him. This pain of abandonment is what we had carried for almost 2 years now. And if you were to understand the story of Dr. Avery, then you must know ours as well. On October 30th, 2018, I returned home from school, an ordinary teenager. It was the last good day that I would ever have, so I remember each and every detail. It was sunny and warm, which was a tad unusual for that time of year. Typically, spring is still cold here in northern Idaho. Dad let me ride to school with 2 of my best friends, Todd and Brittany. Todd had just gotten his driver's permit, and his parents were rich enough to afford him a brand new ride. I could still see myself sticking my hand out the window of the Ford Fusion, letting the wind rush through my fingers. At school, I called Mom, asking for permission to take part in a local 4K color run that would be that Saturday. To my surprise, she said yes, and even suggested that Todd give me a ride to the fairgrounds. Even the bad parts of that day seemed to have some ray of happiness to them, like during music class when a snotty girl pushed me aside to get to the front seat, and I almost fell gracefully into the arms of the senior hunk. Dad came to pick me up on his way to work as usual, and though I didn't notice, looking back now I recognize that the car ride was unusually silent. I remember asking him what was for dinner, and he claimed that Mom would be buying us a pizza from a local place, Gertie's. When I got home, there was a few simple chores for me to do, and then I got permission to go over to my friend Jennifer's house. We laughed and fiddled with our hair and watched some scary cartoons like typical teenagers until Mom called to tell me that it was time to come home. I'd eaten dinner at Jen's, so I hadn't even noticed when I got home that she hadn't ordered the pizza. She asked me to give my little brother Tim a bath because Dad had a flat at work and she had to go pick him up. It was the last time that I ever saw either one of my parents. When I think about what happened after that moment and all the pain we went through, it makes what we saw that day on the side of the road seem almost tame in comparison. Losing our parents has been the hardest thing that we've ever experienced, but now seeing this strange note attached to the bloody jacket, it made it all come full circle. Asher's Grove was a place that had taken our parents away from us. It's a closed-off community not far from here, a cult that dedicated itself to reviving ancient pagan traditions relating to Halloween. Many people over the years have been allured by the mysterious parties they held every year at the end of October, and it entrapped our parents, Police have tried to get a warrant for the facility, but unfortunately the majority of the local police force seemed to be in the cult's pocket. Whatever had happened to our parents, they were officially declared missing that Halloween. I dialed 911 while Gabby climbed over my back time and time again, pretending that I was some sort of horse to be ridden. And finally, after the 10th climb, and listening to the most annoying elevator music ever, I found myself speaking to an older officer who called himself Sam. I briefly explained my reason for calling, and even apologized for delaying in making the call, all of which he understood. He paused for a second and said that he needed to go check something. And then, when he returned, he asked if I was serious. His tone had changed slightly, and I asked him, was something wrong? He told me that a body had been found and identified as that of Kenneth Avery. Then he bid me good day. I thought about the bloody jacket. Maybe he had tried to escape the cult. I mean, with Halloween right around the corner, perhaps he knew something sinister was about to occur. There was something odd about the way the letter was written, too. It didn't sound typical of a note to be given for severance. It was more like a will and testament. As though Dr. Avery had decided he was leaving and he knew he wasn't coming back. The cult saw to it that he couldn't live a life outside the facility. Was this the same fate that had taken our parents away? Tim and Gabby cried as we sat in the cold shelter, and I looked up more information about the upcoming HalloweenTime event the cult had planned. They did it every year. They invited everyone in the area. Most were smart enough to ignore it because someone knew that most of these invites never returned. The cult either brainwashed or killed them. I was sure. But something told me that whatever Kenneth had discovered, it had something to do with this event. I looked up articles from a nearby RTC to see if there was anything there, and sure enough, found a missing person report filed by an attending only a week ago. I decided to reach out to them and explain the odd circumstances of how I'd come in contact with Kenneth. But their response was not one that I had anticipated. I've come to terms with what the children have done. I appreciate you being kind enough to explain one reason for this departure, even if it doesn't answer any of the others. Kenneth was a quiet man who said little but loved much, and I think that's what we miss most. The kind heart like yours, I'm sure that you'll understand that now we simply want to be left alone. Don't bother to go find him or search for any answers on your own. All you'll find is evil in that place. I asked if she wanted to stay in touch, but she didn't see any reason for us to. Not over something like this. It could only make her hurt more. I understood her pain all too well, especially sitting there typing back a response as Gabby slept against my side, and Tim cried for another bottle. Although she didn't say it in so many words, I knew the reason for her reluctance to talk. It was a reluctance I shared too often with anyone who asked me about my own past. When he had left, he told no one. He simply did so, uncaring about the results of such a callous action, unconcerned with what he had left behind. Dr. Avery had abandoned everything, only concerned with his mission. Why then had he even bothered to write the letter? It felt so pointless, so futile, perhaps most irritating of all, so selfish. It felt like he was laughing at all of us, making the pain seep into our skin. Worst of all, it felt all too familiar. I kept the letter my mother had written for their departure to Asher's Grove, trying to forget about it, but it's like an old wound, but never healed. It won't heal. Even after I scrapped the note, the pain it gave me still remained. It was amazing how this man I had never met was having an impact on my thoughts, how much I related to this pain. Finally, I started to realize that I was emulating the feelings I felt for the letter itself. I was being pointless, futile, childish, no better than them. I wasn't going to get over this until I found out. Until I found out what happened to my parents, or Dr. Avery at Asher's Grove. I looked down at my younger siblings and I ruffled their hair, knowing I couldn't just leave them here. I needed to forget about this and move on, and that's what I tried to do, but the cult had other plans. That night, early trick-or-treating was going on in our neighborhood, and Tim and Gabby and I had to take shelter somewhere else. The winds were cold as we walked empty streets, but cold wasn't what bothered me. It was the fact that as we moved out of the way of these costume kids, they were choosing to follow us. I tugged at Gabby and Tim and encouraged them to move faster. I looked back to see if we were still being followed. Then I was struck by something straight in front of me. I toppled over and looked up at the strangely dressed man. His costume was as dark as the night around us and resembled something I had seen in a distant dream.
You were never supposed to leave.
His voice rattled inside my brain. Then he grabbed the hold of my shirt and pulled Gabby towards him. I screamed and I tried to stop it from happening, but it was too late. He yanked her from my arms and I watched in shock as it seemed to absorb her into his costume. He grew larger as he grabbed a hold of Tim and did the same, and all I could do was stand there and shake helplessly as my two siblings were taken by this monster. Around me, the other costume children made a circle. I wondered if this was the same way that Dr. Avery had been killed when he tried to uncover the truth.
The children belong to me. It is nearly time. Nearly Halloween time.
The monster cackled. And I blacked out. The next thing I knew, I was over at the nearby Miracle Clinic being evaluated. Surprisingly, they didn't take my phone away, but it still doesn't make my fresh pain go away. The room I'm in is marred with strange art resembling this strange cartoon. How could something so fake feel so real? Did the cult do this, or was it from my own hand? The door opens and a man with a long white lab coat enters the room. He adjusts his glasses and looks at the cartoon, smiling softly before asking me a simple question. Are you ready to go back? Go back where? I ask with dry mouth. I notice one of the drawings looks like Tim and Gabby running off towards a haunted house. Asher's Grove, the man whispers. That's where they are, he adds. I'm going to take his hand and meet my family again. I know this is fate. I ran for a whole year, but now Halloween can't be avoided any longer.
Hey there, kids, and happy Halloween. It's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I wanted to tell you thank you so much for watching tonight's video, or listening to tonight's episode, this Oktoberfest, on the podcast. If you're not listening on the podcast, then you always can listen on the podcast at Spotify, or just about anywhere you find a podcast. And if you're not listening on YouTube, then you can find it on YouTube, or just about anywhere you find a YouTube. If any of you guys are interested in some of the audiobooks or actual books that have horror stories in them that I've worked on, you can always check out that description down below. In there's a couple of different links to some horror books and horror audiobooks and new things, like hopefully there'll be a Tales from the Gas Station Volume 3 link down there in the next few days, which I'm referring to right now, because if you look and it's out, it'll be there. Also, I wanted to say thank you, all of you who are supporting me on Patreon. That's patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta. If you ever want to help support the show, keep the lights on, feed my cats and the like, you can always head over to patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta, and you can support the show there. Even $1 is greatly appreciated. And I have a very special thank you to these guys, such as Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Mr. Thud, Ken Lando Higuchi, Chompski, Nico Kaeo, Tristain Pelton, Stephen VanHuss, Chance Burnett, Deanna Kraus, G. Weevil 3, TheRedOakShieldVirus, CoryxKenshin, Pothead Holmes, Rival 1, JimboTheHutt, Caspian, Jordan Nells, The Village Witch, Hades' Nephew, Jordan Wayne Deckard, Bradley Leipe, and Charron. Acid System, Mike Bullock, Fooly Cooly Dude, Prozac and Pancake Appreciation, Brian Arse, Cryptic Nightmares, Shadow Morningstar, Brianna Wright, Someone You Love, Said the King 56, Bad Honey, S-Man, Kiri the Sloth, Thomas Burgett, Liam Newman, Sky Harbor, Caleb Dougal, Last Blade Song, Rafael Rodriguez, The Ginger Bros, and Aaron Stormcrow. And another thank you to all you guys who are in the description down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you all for listening. And I hope you all have a wonderfully happy Halloween. Sweet dreams.